I'm not happy.
I don't need Elizabeth Warren or the government giving away my money.
Calling Mike Bloomberg an oligarch has implications in this country that I think are unfair and unreasonable.
I care. That's it.
Makes you think of some rich person who got their money off of oil in Russia, who's taking advantage of a broken and dysfunctional system.
Bernie Sanders saying, the country's corrupt, our system's corrupt. Be careful about that language, Bernie. You know, be careful.
Oh, well, I'm sorry.
Round the nation, TYT Nation, Jeff Waldorf here. Welcome to the show. It is Thursday, so almost the end of the week, and we've got an exciting show for you guys today, including breaking news about Roger Stone. His sentence has been passed down. Fun times. We also have some highlights of the debate last night, including Bloomberg getting absolutely destroyed by pretty much everyone there. That's fun. And then we go to something a little bit more serious, still related to the debate, and how the establishment is now planning to stop Bernie Sanders. Ooh, okay. Anyway, we have that. We also have a story about Bloomberg and his attempts at voter outreach. So that's an interesting story. And then, of course, we're going to talk about that Biden surrogate who is no longer working for the Biden campaign and is blaming Bernie Bros. So, that should be fun. So, all right. Anyway, so now we got a great show, like I said. So please like and share the stream. Super important that you do. I also want to... Look, terrorist attack happened, or, well, not really terrorist attack. It is, but it isn't. At least I'm not hearing it being called a terrorist attack. It's a far-right group that killed several in Germany. I'll have more details about that. We might be talking about that tomorrow on the show. So, but everybody who's been touched in that area, and I know we've got some German viewers in here, condolences go out to your entire country because this is horrible. I mean, again, I don't have the details, all of them in front of me. So I want to do the story justice when we do it. All right. Anyway, I suppose we ought to start by hitting the first story. So we'll talk about Roger Stone. All right. We now have a sentence in the case of Roger Stone. Earlier today, Judge Amy Berman Jackson handed down a sentence of only about 40 months in prison in relation to the crimes he committed during the Mueller investigation. Now, Roger Stone, during the the sentencing hearing, declined the address to address the court. However, his defense lawyer, Mr. Ginsburg, Seth Ginsburg, urged Jackson to be lenient, saying he had been punished enough by his arrest and trial. He said, quote, "The process really has been punishment enough." Now, the reason that I mentioned that, because I found that to be utterly ridiculous. Imagine, right, the reaction if somebody who's a poor black person who committed a crime, right? Obstructed justice, for example. You think they're going to say, oh, no, you know what? No, we should make the sentence far more lenient than we should. And by the way, they had already reduced the sentencing guidelines. I'll get to more detail on that. But no, he's suffered enough just getting arrested. Well, that poor black person is not someone who's powerful and connected and rich like Roger Stone. And so I guess that's the difference, right? When you are powerful, rich, and connected, then I guess just being arrested and trying to have any sort of, getting held to account or accountable for your crimes, that's just too much. It's just, we can't do it. We can't do it. We can't do it. Disaster. Now, what he did, of course, if you can remember, witness tampering, threatening witnesses, obstruction of justice, and, of course, lying to Congress. Wait, didn't Trump get impeached on 2 of those things? Oh, right. And the Republican Congress completely bought off, decided to acquit him on those charges. At least 2 of them. And look, they're all crimes. All crimes. But get this, again, his lawyer argued that Stone shouldn't be punished because he's, quote, a real human being. He's a real human being and not just the larger-than-life political persona he plays on TV. Man, he's a real person. He's not like what you saw on TV, so you should make him, you should let him off. You should be far more lenient to him because he's a real boy. My God, man. Ridiculous arguments. Absolute garbage. All right. So now the big part of this case actually did play out in politics, right? And that's the involvement with including Donald Trump and Department of Justice Attorney General William Barr, right? They personally got involved. So, and the reason I get to that is the sentencing guidelines originally for the prosecutors of the case were about 7 to 9 years. Okay. William Barr comes in, he says, oh, way too harsh, right? Donald Trump first says, he tweets out, way too harsh, reduce the sentence. And guess what? William Barr did the Justice Department, made them basically revise those sentencing guidelines, which led to all the prosecutors in the case quitting, resigning in protest. One of them completely quitting from the Justice Department altogether. Look, they were involved, right? And now here you have a sentence of about half that. Now, prosecutors, the new prosecutors, by the way, we're not happy about this. John Crabb, assistant U.S. attorney, says this prosecution is and was righteous. The court should impose a substantial period of incarceration. Now, he did not give any details on whether or not he is satisfied with the 40 months or just roughly over 3 years. But remember, this is not the prosecution that won the conviction. Again, the original 4 prosecutors, as I mentioned, withdrew from the case from protest. Even then, it apparently, or it appears that the prosecution is saying, maybe that's not long enough. We need substantial incarceration. So now that's devastating. Now, it's also devastating to William Barr. By the way, William Barr was congratulated by Donald Trump earlier for taking charge of the case that was totally out of control. Following that, Barr told ABC News in an interview that Trump's tweets about ongoing prosecutions was making it, quote, impossible to do his job. It's sort of like thanking a getaway driver for driving so well, right? Like, no, don't do that. Don't thank me for basically covering for your ass and helping out your friends, because that makes me look complicit. That makes it look like you were ordering me to do it, which is exactly probably what happened. I think exactly was what happened. You ordered me to do that. I did it, but then you're making me look complicit in this scheme instead of giving me plausible deniability. Oh no, I actually genuinely did think that this was way too harsh, and that tweet was just coincidence. No, Trump gave it away by opening his stupid fat mouth and saying, congratulations for doing exactly what I wanted you to do. Dude, you're not helping. You are not helping. You're not supposed to say that. Let me do what I was hired to do without you exposing me from being stupid. Understand that that's the entire issue between Barr and Trump. I know the media is playing out this, there's big divisions between William Barr and Donald Trump now. And William Barr might actually resign his position out of principle. No, that's not going to happen. Absolutely not going to happen. I would be very, very shocked. No, William Barr is doing exactly what he was hired to do. I think the media is just creating a drama where there actually isn't any, because Barr and Trump are pretty much on lockstep. And the only reason that he's coming out and saying, it's making it really hard for me to do my job, is to try to throw people off the scent. Barr is not a stupid man. Donald Trump's a stupid man. That's why he can't shut up. But William Barr at least knows what he's doing. And so he's like trying to throw the heat off himself and off Donald Trump by ironically saying, Donald Trump, why do you got to say stuff like that? It's kind of ingenious, really, when you think about it. But Trump still ended up getting his wish. Again, a lesser sentence than what Roger Stone actually literally deserves. I think he should have gotten personally about 5 to 7 years. That would have been, reasonable. It wouldn't have been the max sentence, 7 to 9, but it would have been reasonable, 5 to 7, right? Especially considering how he continued to undermine the process by posting on social media before the trial. He posted an image online that appeared to show a targeting gun sight next to Jackson's head. Now, his excuse for it, no, it wasn't a targeting site. It was just a Celtic cross. That's what it was. Really? Really? Come on. No, that's a threat on the judge's life. I'm amazed he wasn't immediately thrown in prison after that. It's kind of insane that he wasn't. And now, of course, the right wing's talking about, the judge was obviously biased in the case. Of course, because they're always biased, because they decided to actually hold someone accountable for their crime. But no, it's a conservative. It's a Trump person. So obviously the judge must be biased in this case. And I don't think there's any evidence of that. So, look, nobody else other than a Trump person would be able to get away with any of this stuff. Nobody. But look, at the end of the day, it is 3 years. That is significant. Then again, who knows? There could be a pardon. Could be very, very likely that he doesn't serve anywhere near that entire sentence and gets let off early. Who knows what's going to happen? But at least in this case, I still get to say, lock him up. Lock him up. All right. Moving on here. Oh, before I get to that, a couple of comments here. Let's see. Hold. Elsa Gray says TYT, the max sentence was 20 years, 7 to 9 was a reduced sentence, and 3 is even further reduced. And so that's disastrous. And again, we don't even know if there's going to be a pardon and the criterion for a pardon in this. So disastrous, right? All around. I think it's a ridiculous sentence. Anyway, moving on here. Let's go to the debate stuff. All right. Now, last night was the first night we saw Mayor Bloomberg enter the debate. And there was a lot of fanfare from MSNBC. You even had Andrew Yang, who is now taking a job as a CNN contributor, saying, well, this is going to be Bloomberg's night. Sorry, Andrew, but that tweet aged very, very poorly because he got utterly destroyed, dismantled by even people like Amy Klobuchar. All right, so now He is, of course, the so-called last hope of the DNC elite, and also utterly terrible debater. All right. Now, throughout the night, Bloomberg kept giving smug, really bad answers. For example, his refusal to release female accusers, the 64 of them, from non-disclosure agreements. He came out in favor of hydraulic fracturing. He blamed India for China's involvement in climate change and many other terrible, terrible things. However, his fate was sealed long before any of those statements, about 5 minutes into the debate, when this moment happened.
I'd like to talk about who we're running against. A billionaire who calls women fat broads and horse-faced lesbians. And no, I'm not talking about Donald Trump. I'm talking about Mayor Bloomberg. Democrats are not going to win if we have a nominee who has a history of hiding his tax returns, of harassing women, and of supporting racist policies like redlining and stop and frisk. Look, I'll support whoever the Democratic nominee is, but understand this. Democrats take a huge risk if we just substitute one arrogant billionaire for another. This country has worked for the rich for a long time and left everyone else in the dirt. It is time to have a president who will be on the side of working families and be willing to get out there and fight for them. That is why I am in this race, and that is how I will beat Donald Trump.
She brought a 2x4, and she was not afraid to use it. And so I absolutely loved that moment. You could see how uncomfortable Bloomberg looked during that entire thing. Like, not good, right? It was beautiful to see. And look, so when you think about it, this is exactly what Elizabeth Warren needed. Her campaign was not doing very well. I think that at this point, she started to ignore the Obama staffers. Whether it's too late for her campaign, look, I don't know. I'm not really even going to talk about that or really address that because that's not really the point of the segment. But when it comes to taking on billionaires, right, bankers, well, that's her wheelhouse. Elizabeth Warren is at her best when she's on the attack against a certain type of person. And that person is, of course, someone like Bloomberg. And so this was such a good moment, right, that somebody online ended up changing his information on Wikipedia to say, well, that he had died on February 19th. The cause of death, Elizabeth Warren. And that's right there. That's from his Wikipedia. Ouch, man. Look, whatever you think of Elizabeth Warren, I thought that was an excellent moment. And she actually was able to show her fighting spirit. Where was that Elizabeth Warren 3 debates ago, right? And look, she was hitting everybody. She wasn't just hitting Bloomberg. She hit Sanders a couple of times. I think the effects, the impact of that was pretty negligible on Bernie Sanders, but she was hitting pretty much everyone else. And so that does show that she does still have fighting spirit. And that's always good. I think that when she was a front runner, she, was on the defense, and she does not do very well with defense. Bernie Sanders, on the other hand, actually does do pretty well with defense, as he was slapping away attacks all night, especially on the whole socialism thing and his healthcare plan. Pete Buttigieg going after him about that and all that. But mostly, all the candidates pretty much went after Mayor Bloomberg. And that actually helped not only Bernie Sanders, of course, but also Joe Biden. And so Bloomberg's addition in this debate was actually incredibly helpful as everybody basically ganged up against him. So now, speaking of everyone else jumping in, we've got an attack here from Bernie Sanders on Mayor Bloomberg, which was also pretty good. Let's take a look.
Why is your revolution a better bet?
In order to beat Donald Trump, we're going to need the largest voter turnout in the history of the United States. Mr. Bloomberg had policies in New York City of stop and frisk, which went after African American and Latino people in an outrageous way. That is not a way you're going to grow voter turnout. What our movement is about is bringing working class people together, black and white and Latino, Native American, Asian American, around an agenda that works for all of us and not just the billionaire class. And that agenda says that maybe, just maybe, we should join the rest of the industrialized world, guarantee health care to all people as a human right, raise that minimum wage to a living wage of $15 an hour, and have the guts to take on the fossil fuel industry.
And you pretty much know how the rest of that goes. Another great response, again, pushing him on stop and frisk. So also great, even Amy Klobuchar had a nice little moment when, of course, she said, or she brought up the idea that Bloomberg wanted some of these other candidates to basically clear the field for him. She's like, no, that ain't going to happen. Like, you know, who do you think you are, basically, is what she was asking. So, and all of that was excellent. Now, the thing that struck me the most, right, was how unprepared Mayor Bloomberg was going into this whole thing. Did he really think he was just going to waltz in and not get destroyed on his disastrous record? He's basically a Republican. As I mentioned before, all the stuff that came out, and again, big props to Benjamin Dixon for really kind of exposing his record and finding the things that he had actually said on stop and frisk, which gave a lot of ammunition to all of these different candidates. You know, also the fact that he was trying to buy his way in and successfully did that. DNC rule change, that made a lot of the candidates incredibly angry, right? And so why did he think that he was going to not have to prepare for this? Or that being smug and deeply arrogant was going to help him in this debate? But here's the thing, that's who he is, right? And he's worth over $60 billion. So it's almost as if he felt like he didn't even need to prepare, because that's part of who he is, right? I think that there's almost no way that he didn't look at anyone on the stage and think, I don't understand. I could buy you all right now, and yet you have the temerity to attack me? Again, when he was being attacked on the NDAs by Elizabeth Warren, again, bringing the 2x4, he'd rolled his eyes. Ugh, here we go again, right? I can't believe these plebs are attacking me. You're only worth you're only worth $18 million. Ugh. I could totally purchase you, and maybe I will try. Maybe I'll try to purchase you like I've been trying to buy everything else in my entire life. The guy's Donald Trump, basically. But there is one key difference. As I've been saying before, he is a lot like Donald Trump, but with no charisma. He's got none of the charisma of Donald Trump. Donald Trump, his only strength, even with the brain melt, right, which that makes him entertaining, he can actually play a crowd. Mayor Bloomberg cannot play a crowd. I struggle to understand how he even won any of his elections as mayor. He can't debate worth a crap. All he does is just throw money at everything, right? And that's it. He only gets by on the fact that he's incredibly rich. And so probably everyone around him kisses his ass, in exchange for money or possibility for favors. And maybe that's one reason he was so unprepared. He thought, no, I got this. Don't worry about it. And maybe his staffers were too afraid to actually tell him, no, here's what they're going to attack you on, and here's how you fight against that. So I don't know, man. Now, one more thing, which is pretty hilarious, right? He says he's the only guy who's able to take on Donald Trump. No, I'm the strongest. I'm the one who's tough enough. I'm a tough New Yorker, and I can take on Trump. Well, the guy on the stage literally melted. Well, not literally, but like melted in the face of attacks. There's no way he could take on Donald Trump and win. Trump Donkey Konged his way through 16 other Republicans, right? Now, to be fair, of course, none of those other Republicans were as vicious as Elizabeth Warren was. And I mean that in, of course, the most flattering way possible, because I think in order to take on Trump, you have to be sort of vicious. That's one of the problems that I've had with Bernie Sanders, is that he's not vicious enough. But you put him against Donald Trump, and well, I think he's also going to bring the 2x4. Although it'll be a polite 2x4, but it'll still be a 2x4, and he'll crush him on policy. But as far as Bloomberg is concerned, I think he's done. I think this is a lot like what you saw when Tulsi Gabbard basically ended Kamala Harris's campaign. I think that Warren, as well as everyone else contributing, but I think mainly Warren, just ended Bloomberg's. And if she's going to be remembered for anything in the debate or this entire election cycle, if this is the last debate that we see Elizabeth Warren in, and that's certainly possible, maybe she'll get a nice bump from this. And it's very, very possible that she will. Even if this is the last debate that we see her in, well, it's blaze of glory. Okay. All right. One more debate story. Before I do that, though, Weary Pirates in the chat says, Warren proved herself last night. She would have made a good VP, but for the whole snake thing, I actually don't agree that she would make a good VP. I actually think that she'd make a great Treasury Secretary. VP, I mean, look, VP, you've got to have a VP that is in line with your priorities, right? I don't necessarily believe that Elizabeth Warren is 100% with Bernie's policies, right? You need somebody who is, yes, strong and not easily influenced. I think Elizabeth Warren can be too easily influenced to go more establishment. That's not a good thing. However, I think what she would be great in, and this utilizes all of her natural talents, she would be great as Treasury Secretary. Get her in a room with all the bankers. See what happens. It's going to be just like what you saw with Warren versus Bloomberg, because that's what she's been doing her entire career. And yes, she has been very consistent on taking bankers to task. And so I think that Treasury Secretary would be the perfect job for Elizabeth Warren, whether or not she was nice to Bernie. And remember, here's the thing. Bernie is different than everyone else because Bernie Sanders does not attack unless he is attacked, right? Even so, Bernie Sanders, and you notice this, right, did not attack Elizabeth Warren. I did not see any attacks. Maybe I missed something because I was furiously tweeting at the time, but I don't think that he will ever attack Elizabeth Warren. Whereas Elizabeth Warren, she's in a primary and she knows she's in a primary. And she's like, no, I have no friends. Bernie Sanders, not my friend, right? Because there are no friends in politics. And so it's one of those things where it's like, I get it. That's why I kind of like forgive her taking shots. Not really. I don't know if forgive's the right answer to that or the right word to use, but where I don't really care, right? Okay, yeah, go ahead and hit Bernie Sanders on his policy, whatever, right? It's a primary. You're going to try to differentiate yourself. That's the whole point, right? I will call out if you're wrong on that. And likely she is wrong when it comes to disagreement on policy with Bernie Sanders. But still, I understand it's a freaking primary. Now, the only thing that got me riled up was the sexism thing, right? Where she tried to accuse him of, saying like a woman can't win against Donald Trump. I think that's ridiculous. I think a woman definitely could win, but it has to be somebody who is a progressive populist, who is right on the policies, and who stands strong. If that Elizabeth Warren went up against Donald Trump, right, the one that we saw last night, and had not flipped on any of her policy positions, and she stayed super progressive, well then, yes, there was a good chance that Elizabeth Warren could annihilate Donald Trump. But I think that she's really kind of messed up her chances. And so, we'll have to see. But again, I'm obviously going to be 100% behind Bernie Sanders. All right, Jeff for VP. I mean, I'm not saying I wouldn't do the job. All right. So, Cenk Uygur for Speaker of the House. Yes. Okay. Now we're getting somewhere, right? All right. Next story here. During the last part of the Nevada debate, Chuck Todd, who was one of the moderators, asked the candidates what they thought about a scenario in which one candidate has the most delegates, but not quite enough to clinch the nomination. And here's the question and the candidates' responses.
There's a very good chance none of you are going to have enough delegates to the Democratic National Convention to clinch this nomination. Okay? If that happens, I want all of your opinions on this. Should the person with the most delegates at the end of this primary season be the nominee, even if they are short of a majority? Senator Sanders, I'm going to let you go last here because I know your view on this. So instead, I will start with you, Mayor Bloomberg.
Whatever the rules of the Democratic Party are, they should be followed. And if they have a process, which I believe they do,
I'm trying to do
so
this yes
that
or no to make it fast.
everybody can.
So you want the convention to work its will?
Yes.
Senator Warren.
But a convention working its will means that people have the delegates that are pledged to them, and they keep those delegates until you come to the convention. All of the people.
All righty. Vice President Biden?
Play by the rules.
Yes or no? Leading person with the delegates, should they be the nominee or not?
No, let the process work its way out.
Mayor Buttigieg?
Not necessarily, not to listen.
Senator Klobuchar?
Let the process work.
Senator Sanders?
Well, the process includes 500 superdelegates on the second ballot. So I think that the will of the people should prevail. Yes.
Thank you, guys.
The most votes should become the nominee.
5 no's and a yes.
All right. So a lot of no's and a yes. Bernie Sanders, the only one saying that, yeah, if you have the most delegates, you should win. Everyone else was saying, no, we should respect the process. Now, what does that actually mean? What does letting the process play out, as Biden said, means? It means a brokered convention. That is something that hasn't happened since 1952. Now, according to the rules, if one candidate has the most delegates but doesn't get 50% of the delegates, right, the superdelegates will come in for round 2 and get to choose the nominee. Now, they don't have to do it respective of the wishes of the voters of their states that they come from. These 500 superdelegates can come in, and if they decide, you know what, even though Bernie Sanders has the most delegates, he's got 39% of all the delegates, right? I don't care. I'm going to choose Amy Klobuchar. And then now Klobuchar is the nominee. I mean, that's an insane system. But that's exactly the system that every single one of these candidates, save for Bernie Sanders, says we should have. Even Elizabeth Warren. That is deeply, deeply depressing. And so, and not only is it deeply depressing, it shows that they support a deeply undemocratic process. Disastrous. Now, it should be, as Bernie explains, the person who gets the most votes, therefore the most delegates, wins the most states, should win the nomination. Instead, we have a system where we're going to let unelected superdelegates who are not bound to state results to decide the election. And that, again, is disastrous. And so there's a lot of response to this. I'm going to go to Kyle Kolinsky here on Twitter. He puts it pretty succinctly. Stunning middle finger to democracy in the Democratic base. Inexcusable and the definition of authoritarian. No, he's right. Not only that, but you had a former Democratic candidate, Marianne Williamson. She also spoke out. She said, quote, the Democratic Party should be on notice if you even think about using superdelegates to take the nomination from someone who has the plurality of delegates going into Milwaukee. We, the people, will not take it lying down. Those are strong words from Marianne Williamson. So she is definitely on Bernie's side when it comes to this issue of superdelegates. Now, Benjamin Dixon, who is a journalist here and a friend of the show, says it's almost like immediately after everyone realized that Bloomberg was an incompetent overlord, they collectively decided to go to Plan C to stop Sanders. Plan C being contested convention. Same rules apply. You steal democracy from us. We steal your power from you by refusing to vote. And that's ultimately what he's been saying and what a lot of people are saying, right? You use the superdelegates to undermine democracy, then what's the point of engaging in democracy? And so that's dangerous, because the whole idea of a brokered convention not only is, again, super undemocratic, it makes people very, very angry, but can be used to depress turnout for Bernie Sanders. And so that is super disastrous. But I think that is part of the plan and part of the reason why so many of people are still in this race as well. And so I've got more responses here from progressives. Beth, purity test enthusiast, which I love that, says, hey, DNC, get one thing straight right now. If you're planning to steal the nomination from Bernie with superdelegates, you can count on every Bernie supporter staying home in the general and having 4 more years of Trump. You think we're playing? F around and find out. More. Gallifrey and Jedi says, I'll never vote for Trump, but if Bernie rolls into the convention with the most delegates and doesn't get the nod, what I will do is spend every day from then till November attacking the Democratic nominee as hard as I can. And then I'm writing in Bernie Sanders. Understand that if this happens, if they undermine democracy, it's going to be the end of the Democratic Party. There are people out there that are like, no, burn it down. That's it. We've had it. Your superdelegates have screwed us, screwed democracy, screwed the will of the people. We have nothing left. We owe this party nothing. Understand that that is their message. And so if this is what the DNC is going to try to do, it shows that they don't believe in democracy. Now, to underpin that, by the way, yesterday, and you might have missed it, the Washington Post published an opinion piece by somebody who argued that the primaries should be even less democratic. Funny how that comes out as soon as Bernie Sanders wins, right? And takes sizable leads in the polls and becomes the front runner, right? Now, this person writing in the Washington Post promotes something called a preference primary. Now, what is that? Really quickly, I'll summarize. A preference primary is basically like a normal primary. However, it is non-binding, the results of it. So say Bernie Sanders wins your preference primary. Now, since it's non-binding, that preference goes up to the elites, the party elites, who then will decide if they will take your preference into consideration. But what if their preference is a centrist moderate, someone like Pete Buttigieg? Well, they can decide, I don't care about the will of the people. Yes, the preference in this primary, for example, maybe Bernie Sanders gets 36% of the vote in the preference primary, and Buttigieg, gets 10%. Basically the polling that you have now. I don't care about your preference. I like Buttigieg. So guess what? He's going to win the nomination. He's going to win the primary. Preference primary. That's exactly what they're arguing against democracy. So if you think that these people are going to try to follow the will of the people and their preferred candidates and policies, hell no. You're going to have a centrist moderate who offers zero change and is going to get mauled by Donald Trump. Now remember here, the goal isn't just to get rid of Donald Trump. It's to stop the conditions that create him in the first place and will ultimately create a more effective and dangerous Trump. We have to honor the will of the people. And by the way, I took a personal poll here on my own channel of you guys. And so I want to share the results so far with 2,400 votes. And the voting is still open on this, right? I asked, if there's a brokered convention and the superdelegates decide to take the nomination away from the candidate who has the plurality of votes, therefore the most votes, would you still vote for that nominee in the general election? I think that's an important question. 23% of you said yes, 14% of you said no. And the third option, burn down the DNC or burn it all down, came in with 63%. Look, it's not exactly scientific, but I'm just asking you guys. And overwhelmingly, if this happens, if Bernie Sanders gets cheated out of the nomination by the superdelegates, there's a lot of people that are looking to riot. So DNC, you're on notice. Do not try to mess with us. It will not end well for anyone. Okay. I think I'll take a break there. And we'll come back. We've got the Bloomberg story on social media. And then we have a Biden surrogate who's a little salty about getting called out for putting out doctored videos. So that's an interesting story. Stay right here around the nation. Please like and share the stream. I'm going to thank some patrons and channel members when we come back. And read some super chats as well. All right, guys. We'll be back in just a couple of minutes. Stay right here around the nation.
Mike Pence.
Welcome back to the show. Around the nation right here. TYT Nation. Jeff Waldorf here with you. All right. So first we've got some patrons here. I want to thank, Richard McGrath and In My Image. So thank you. You can become a patron by going to patreon.com/TYT Nation and signing up. Channel members as well. I want to thank Michael Bascom and Rod Harvey Jr. So thank you. You can become a channel member by hitting the join button below. There's numerous other ways, of course, to support the show. You can find those in the links, including merchandise like mugs and stuff. So mugs and stuff. I like mugs. I drink a lot of coffee, so I love my TYT Nation mug. And of course, I'll be taking suggestions on what else you would like to see in a mug. Maybe the show logo. Maybe, I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, let us know what you want to see on merchandise. And we'll do my best to have it designed. Or design it myself, which will probably look terrible. But I try, guys. I try. All right. Anyway. Couple of super chats here from you guys. I actually cannot see that from Zachary, but thank you. Keep it up. Thank you. Star Trek says Bernie's the non-flip-flop, same message for 40 years candidate. It's a genuine article. Bernie's the revolution we need here in America. 2x4 club. Nice. Okay, I thought I saw some other ones here. Thank you, Elaine, by the way. Jeff, always the same for years. Well, I appreciate it. Thank you. Yes, let's see. Actually, I do want to read a tweet here from Dana Fairbanks, who points out that the actual title at the Washington Post of the article that I mentioned was "To Fix the Primaries, Let the Elites Decide." Oh. And look, Anna Kasparian did a great breakdown on that, by the way, of the entire story. I just mentioned it in passing, but she did an excellent breakdown. So if you want to check that out after the show, get a little bit more context into it. That is, I recommend it. All right. Anyway, let's see. Moving on, let's go to Bloomberg. Another Bloomberg story. Mike Bloomberg's 2020 presidential campaign is reportedly paying hundreds of people a lot of money in order to promote the candidate. This is according to a recent article here in the Wall Street Journal. So now, apparently, if you're somebody who's an influencer online, you will be paid $2,500 a month to promote the candidate via text message and their personal social media feeds. This is the newest plot to try to buy his way into popularity. Wow. $2,500. You realize that is more than what I make a month. Wow. I mean, look, I'm not saying that you're going to see some Bloomberg stuff pop up. No, I'm kidding. But man, that is a lot of money per month just for doing that. That's insane. Now, Bloomberg's team, according to the Journal, is hiring more than 500 deputy digital organizers to work up to 30 hours a week and promote his talking points to online friends and phone contact lists. Now, this is right now happening in California, and according to internal documents. And if it does well in California, it may be expanded to other states. So let me tell you straight up, right? If I start receiving texts from any of you that are pro Bloomberg, I might hit the unfriend button. I'm just saying. And I also might be like, how the hell did you get my phone number? So, but no, really though. Now, according to the Journal, the strategy behind this is to attract voters through what they call a personal touch, rather than random messages from strange people. Now, look, that's an interesting approach. I've gotten some of those random messages from random people, and it's pretty easy to tell them to F off when they're not your stepmom or whatever, when they're not your in-laws. My in-laws, of course, are conservative Trump voters, so I'm not going to get a pro-Bloomberg message from them or anyone that I know, but some of you might not be so lucky. So it might be a little bit harder to tell your parents off if they start texting you about Bloomberg, which is funny because, look, they're getting paid to do so. Now, the scheme is being aided by a mobile app called Outvote, which is funded by a Democratic technology and investment organization known as Higher Ground Labs. Now, anybody who's caught doing this is probably going to need to find higher ground because the backlash, the groundswell of anti-Bloomberg sentiment is going to be huge. All right. Now, Outvote says, our app allows anyone to plug into a Democratic campaign and see which of their friends are registered voters in the district and coordinate SMS outreach with the campaign for event invites, social sharing, fundraising, and getting out the vote. So it's another one of these ridiculous apps. Now, the Bloomberg campaign team has been contacted for comment about the strategy by Newsweek. And they say, one of the most effective ways of reaching voters is by activating their friends and network. So, but here's the thing, though. It's fake support. It's not real. It doesn't actually exist. It's wise because you're getting paid to do it. That's not grassroots support. Now, Bernie Sanders has an app, and so I'm not crapping on apps, right? Okay. Anyway, so I'm not messing. I'm not crapping on the idea. Bernie Sanders has the Burn app, right, which is wildly successful. You know why it's wildly successful? Because it turns out Bernie Sanders is popular, and people actually want to use his app, and actually want to reach out to other people and evangelize, in lack of a better word, about the candidate to their friends and family. That's organic, though. What Michael Bloomberg is doing is completely fake and inorganic, and saying, I'm going to take my $2,500 a month and I'm going to reach out to everybody on my contact list, and I'm going to say how awesome Michael Bloomberg is. And he's only awesome because he's giving me money. Basically, that's what that is. And so that's the difference, right? Sanders supporters support him because they want to spread the message, because they actually believe in his policies and actually support the policies. And they want to convert people from other candidates because they're excited, they're passionate. They're not getting paid for this. I mean, how pathetically sad are you when you have to buy supporters? And for that, I go to Donald Trump. Now, Donald Trump, look, before he took off, he paid people to be at his rallies. And with Bloomberg paying off people on social media to hype him up, it's basically the same thing. It's super Trumpian. Again, you're not going to find Bernie Sanders doing anything like this. Bernie Sanders isn't paying people to support him. No, he's got actual grassroots support. Now, with Bloomberg, look, he's already paid a bunch of social media pages and influencers to upload memes about him. Now, some of these accounts, by the way, involve Do You Even Lift, White People Humor, and The Funny Introvert. So the reason I'm saying these pages is these are pages that you should avoid. Gone, right? As well as a company called literally Meme 2020. Now, that is being spearheaded by an executive from Jerry Media. So also places to avoid, right? How sad do you have to be to pay for memes? Not only would you be sad, but also deeply uncool. You know why? I think memes, I'm an old-fashioned guy. Memes should come from the heart, right? They're a labor of love and creativity. I've seen a lot of creative memes. You cannot buy dank memes, okay? If you have to manufacture them, then they're not going to be dank. They're just missing something. But see, Bloomberg, you can tell he's the guy who throws money at literally everything because he has no personality. He's smug, arrogant, as we've seen in the recent debate. And that's why it was so important to get him on the debate stage, by the way. Because when you see him in a nice, polished ad, well, then, of course, he's going to come across as strong and likable, whatever. But what we saw on the debate stage was him getting eviscerated by Elizabeth Warren as she pummeled him repeatedly with a 2x4. And not just her, but everyone else on that stage. Even Joe Biden got a couple of hits in. Joe Biden, the guy was barely even there. And Buttigieg was going to float away in a cloud of platitudes. Still, more effective than Mayor Bloomberg. And so, look, he's got no personality. He's completely arrogant, as I said before, and convinced 100% of his right to win the nomination. He's not trying to win votes. He's trying to buy them. He's trying to buy democracy. And he has spent till around $400 million on ads so far, including spending $1 million a day on Facebook advertising in a 2-week period. $1 million a day for 2 weeks. He's also paid off and poached a lot of talent from other political campaigns, depriving them, of course, of people. And the only reason that a lot of people, these people are working for Mike Bloomberg is because he's the one who can actually afford to pay people extravagantly. On one hand, look, I don't blame him for taking the job, right? I get it. But at the same time, what are you doing? You're working for Bloomberg. Like, do you really want to debase yourself like that for a paycheck? I understand stuff. It's tough out there. But really? That said, you could be like the person that works for Bloomberg, but spends his time on the clock canvassing for Bernie. If you do that, well, then that's a little bit more acceptable. Okay. Can we call him Bloomberg? No, I have to be correct. You can call him Bloomberg all you want. Okay. All right. Moving on here. We'll get to that story I've been talking about for a couple of days. All right. A surrogate for presidential candidate Joe Biden had to resign from a group called Pennsylvania Young Democrats. So now you hear her story of it. She says, well, it's because of the mean Bernie bros. Look at what you did. You made me have to resign from this group. However, Pennsylvania Young Democrats disagrees with that. And the whole thing started over a few mean tweets of hers and a doctored video. So now the woman in question is Lindy Lee, and she had previously served as the treasurer for the Pennsylvania Young Democrats, a position she has, in her words, been forced to resign because mean Bernie bros, right? Well, that's her public words. In private, she tells a different story. So now this was broken. The story was broken by Jamie Augustin, and who is an immigration paralegal. And she notes that Lindy's doctored video, which was edited to appear as though Bernie Sanders was praising communist leaders, has millions of views, right? Now, in the video, misleadingly titled, Bernie Sanders lavishes praise on communist Russia, preferring the Soviet Union to the American way of life. So understand that this is some deeply McCarthyite, red-baiting garbage, right? So now in the video, Sanders talks about how, it looks like Moscow's got some decent subway stations. Oh, and they've also got cultural and youth programs. Well, those are nice. I appreciate those. Well, as Bernie Sanders does, as he appreciates lots of those kinds of programs, public transportation and youth programs. Great. So now this was during a sister city visit back in 1983. So that's back when he was mayor of Burlington. And he went over to have his quote-unquote honeymoon in Russia, which actually wasn't a honeymoon at all. It was actually a work trip. Now, nothing he said there was, of course, controversial. Wow. Subways and youth programs. You got him. You got him, Lindy. Congratulations. Totally shows how he prefers the Soviet way of life, except that it totally doesn't. Now, the editing came into play, of course, when she basically cut out the criticism of Soviet authoritarian communism. And so there's no context. When you look at the full video in context and not the edited one, you'll see that Bernie Sanders, while yes, praising some of the stuff that they do in Russia, is also very critical of Soviet authoritarian communism. And so doesn't at all prefer the Soviet way of life to America. But hey, look, Bernie once had, vodka, shirtless, who was caught shirtless drinking vodka with some Ruskies, so he must be a communist. Ridiculous. I don't even know where to start. I guess maybe with the facts, which is what Lindy doesn't have. Now, Bernie Sanders went to Russia with other government officials from Vermont as part of the Sister City program, as I mentioned before. That program involved spending time with regular Russians living under that system in that city. There are tapes. They're dreadfully boring, according to a Mother Jones reporter that had actually sat down and watched all of them. Now, relevant to the discussion, which was left out of this entire thing, Bernie Sanders talked about housing, right? And he talked about housing in America versus the Soviet Union. He said, quote, in America today, in general, the housing is better than in the Soviet Union. Well, that just blows away your argument. Now, he also talks about the candor of the Russian people that he had talked to. He said, quote, I went there expecting them to say, well, everything is great. There's no problem. But that certainly wasn't the case. They were proud of the fact, for example, that their healthcare system is free. But they would be open to acknowledge that it's probably 10 years behind the United States in terms of medical technology. So, for one, he's saying, I kind of expected them to lie to me about the system. No, but turns out they were honest about it. And they said, hey, look, we got free healthcare, but it is problematic. The United States definitely has better healthcare when it comes to technology. And that's consistent with Bernie's message is the healthcare is the greatest in the world, but only if you're rich. We need to make that universal for everybody so that we can catch up to the rest of the world. And so he also said the subways are nice. You got youth programs. And so there's some things that we could learn from doing these exchanges. Okay. Nuance, right? And that was the whole point of the trip, is to get some honest perspective about how people live. Now, whenever you're earnest, whenever you're honest, well, of course, that's going to get used against you, like in the case of Lindy Lee. Now, Jamie, through leaked screenshots, noted that Lindy had sent to a pro-Biden group, found that the Biden campaign was well aware of this attempted smear. Augustin shared screenshots from several pages of the leaked group chat titled J-Hive Biden Front. Great. There's a J-Hive now. As if K-Hive wasn't bad enough. Lee describes the context of her separation from the Young Democrats, says, I was forced to resign as treasurer of PA Young Dems because of my anti-Sanders tweets, some of which were very anti-Semitic, basically calling Bernie Sanders a fake Jew. Where have we heard that before? Oh, right, there's another guy on Twitter that said the same thing, that said that Bernie Sanders is an effing fake Jew. And so very anti-Semitic tweets as well. And she shared in them. Now she says, I was forced to resign because of my anti-Sanders tweets. No more fundraisers. Screw them. The Biden campaign is furious over this, Lee wrote in another series of group chat messages. I asked for my money back, so at least I'll be getting that. Now, the thing is, this smear was effective in the fact that mainstream media latched onto this. Journalist Jonathan Alter tweeted out this video, as well as Bill Kristol, Ana Navarro, and many other anti-Sanders conservatives, right? Now, the only person that caught on to this was CNN reporter, other than, of course, Bernie Sanders supporters who obviously called this out. You had one mainstream journalist, CNN reporter Andrew Kaczynski. Now, he did some fact-checking on this and found that it was BS. He said one thing that would be helpful in discussing the nuances of his views on the Soviet Union and the international left would be a degree of literacy about them from commentators. For instance, he was always critical of authoritarianism in the Soviet Union. For instance, the video people are responding to is edited with a false caption to cut his comments on Soviet Union's deficiencies in healthcare and not being democratic, with the author of the tweet hiding replies linking to the full press conference. And by the way, I went and did my own checking, right? I'm surprised that I wasn't blocked. I'll probably be blocked after this. But I went and checked out her Twitter account, and guess what? She was doing exactly that. She was hiding replies and blocking people for just either making a comment with the correct video, with everything put in context, and anyone who disagreed with her. And so it's gross, it's deliberate, and unfortunately, it is in bad faith. Now, Alter, by the way, when called out, they deleted their original posts and offered apologies. Alter admitted this, quote, I didn't know the full tape was available. Having now watched all of Bernie's comments, many of which were aimed at boosting perestroika and a democratic society and launch of a sister city program, a fine idea, by the way, the overall presentation was a little puffy, but not so bad. Alter, of course, Navarro, and the rest are still massively against Bernie Sanders, but were forced, I think grudgingly, to apologize and backtrack. Mainstream journalists are so eager to attack Bernie Sanders that they didn't do the most rudimentary of fact checks. They couldn't see that it was an altered, edited video. So I give props to Kaczynski for actually doing his homework on this and saying, actually, you know, that video was edited, right? You might want to do some journalism, guys. So now the response to this from progressives, of course, is pretty aggressive. And it needs to be. Glenn Greenwald weighed in. He said, the same doctored video and blatantly false tweet that was spread vilely over the internet might people like Bill Kristol, Ana Navarro, and so many other GOP operatives and national security state officials. Unlike Lindy Lee, they'll suffer no consequences for spreading this fraud. Chief among those boasting the doctored Sanders videos was Dartmouth professor Brendan Nyhan. Now, Nyhan, ironically, once gave a speech entitled, Why People Believe Fake News, Myths, and Conspiracy Theories. Later on, of course, not really realizing the irony, spread literal fake news. Hey, that's embarrassing. Nyhan walked it back once the video emerged, but insisted that Sanders was still politically vulnerable on the top of awful regimes. So, of course, like a non-apology apology. Now, later on, Yahoo News covered this, and their article is ridiculous because it paints Lindy Lee as a victim of Bernie bro bullying, right? Now, Lee told the newspaper, quote, this is like Bernie bro behavior in real life, referencing aggressive attacks online. I wasn't always like this. They drove me to this. So, wait. We drove, like Bernie Bros, right, which doesn't exist, drove Miss Lindy Lee to go and post edited videos of Bernie praising communists. Now, this is somebody who apparently or allegedly had liked Bernie Sanders before. No, it's your fault. You drove me away, and then you made me post anti-Semitic tweets and edited videos against Bernie Sanders. Now, look, I don't care if you don't like Bernie Sanders, right? If you have a problem with some of his policies, like, hey, I think that it's fine that 68,000 people a year die to the lack of health care, because I think if we have national health care, it'll be socialism, communism. I don't like that. All right, well, we're going to have a disagreement, but at least you're coming from a place of honesty, right? If you don't like him, be honest about why you don't like him, that you don't really want people to have health care. And that you think the system is fine the way it is. Okay, we're going to disagree, but it's fine. But going and taking things out of context and lying about your candidates, and lying about candidates that you don't like, spreading smears, doing misinformation, fake news, right? Well, that's where we should draw the line. But nonetheless, right, here's the original tweet. Bernie, who praised communist regimes and joined a socialist party that took Iran's side during the hostage crisis, is a grave risk to American democracy. Get at me, Bernie bros. Do what you do best. Excel in hate. I have to remind you that hate is not correcting someone, right? It just brings me back to The Office. Love that show. Where Steve Carell says, I've been a victim of a hate crime. And Stanley points out, well, that's not what that is. That's not a hate crime. He says, well, I hated it. Well, that's exactly what she's doing. She posts misinformation and hatred against Bernie Sanders. And a lot of these people do the same thing. And then when we point it out, hey, man, that's not cool. That's not correct. Or that, that's wrong. And here's why. How dare you? How dare you hit me with the hate? Because they feel that being corrected is hatred. I think Anna Kasparian said something on debate coverage recently where she said that, hey, look, Bernie Sanders folks, they're like the Ashley guys. And that's true. We're like, well, actually, no, that's wrong. This is the truth. And nobody likes the Ashley guys. And to some people, pointing out facts is the same to them as hatred. Well, in that case, I welcome your hatred because we're not going to stop pointing out the facts. Now, one more here. Tweet from Lindy and her response. She says, sorry, Nice try, Berner. Sorry you can't handle the truth about Bernie. Sorry you have to traffic in hate and intimidation. Yeah. All right. So now, let me go to the Young Democrats. Now, she claims that it was the Bernie bros that pushed her out, right? Those are the people that made her quit her job. Well, Mr. DeLuca, president of the Pennsylvania Young Democrats, actually shared a different side of why they asked for her resignation. He told the Philadelphia Inquirer many state Democratic Party officials had raised concerns over what was shared on Miss Lee's Twitter page. Again, as she is being somebody who was against Bernie Sanders, who was posting negative things about Bernie, right? Now, Mr. DeLuca said, Lindy is putting the pressure on herself. Certainly, she said she would rather resign than talk to me about her Twitter account. So it wasn't the bros that pushed her out. It was her that pushed her out. Her hatred, her anger. DeLuca said, quote, her resignation on Monday was at her own free will. Well, that's it. These people hate Bernie Sanders so much that they will do anything that they can to attack and hate and blame supporters for trying to correct her misinformation and hatred. These are bad faith actors. These are not good people, and they should be ignored and avoided. Okay. Man. See why that's a fascinating story, why I wanted to share that. All right, guys. Thank you for going around the nation with me today. Please like and share the stream if you haven't already. Please consider becoming a patron, patreon.com/TYTNation. Subscribe, do all that fun stuff. Like our Facebook page. That's facebook.com/TYTNation. Got to get up to those 10,000 followers, so maybe I can make a little money. And all that stuff. So, and it will, help us stay on the air. We need your help more than ever. All right. Thank you, guys. Love you. And remember, change begins with you. Good night, nation. See you guys later.
Please clap.
Oh, wow, I'm sorry.
You're kicking me out the door. You're kicking me out the door.